Good morning, everybody, and happy Aloha Friday. Welcome to PSG of Mercer County. PSG, the Professional Service Group of Mercer County, is a group that is here for you, anybody that is in any kind of career transition. And as you know, we do like to celebrate Aloha Friday, which is why you see me in my Aloha shirt. You are all welcome to, on any Friday, to wear something colorful and floral. But in addition to being Aloha Friday, today is National Pizza Party Day. So it encourages everyone to go have a pizza party. And with the weather turning nice, maybe you can have a pizza party outside. We have some really nice weather these next couple of days. It's going to be warm the next couple of days. It'll keep your pizza warm outside. So if you want to celebrate having a pizza party, today is at the very least the day to do it. And for PSG of Mercer County, so we are here to provide support, education opportunities, provide some references through a number of means, all to help you become more efficient and more effective in your own job search. And among those, we do have our LinkedIn group. So if you're on LinkedIn, and you should be on LinkedIn, go search for our LinkedIn group. Now you can have connected to you 100 groups in LinkedIn, and it's a good idea to get as many as possible, because joining LinkedIn groups means that your first degree connections, your ability to in-mail, which is the LinkedIn email, the ability to in-mail is extended to all those people that are in your group. So functionally, it's like having many more first degree connections. And that'll come in handy in your job search, because as you are doing your own research into target companies and maybe upcoming interviews, you may find that you're actually connected to someone through a group. Our group is only for people who are in career transition or were in career transition. We have over 1,660 members, so please look for our group. It's a great location. People are active. They share articles and job leads and other information. So if you want to be tapped into that community, please join our LinkedIn group. Now, if you do join the LinkedIn group in the next couple days, and you and I don't really know each other yet very well, I may send you an email in LinkedIn just asking you, why you're joining. And the reason why is we don't accept anybody in our LinkedIn group. We only accept you. We only accept people who have been to our in-person or our virtual meetings. We're trying to keep out people who are just trying to collect names and trying to collect groups. We want them to have a purpose for job search. So if you're not someone I know, I may just send you an email and you'll say, oh yes, I was on the program with Lisa, and that'll be fine. When we meet in person, of course, is registration. We don't have that online, so I may not be able to easily know who you are with the virtual group. So that's it with the LinkedIn group. We do also have our website. It is psgofmercercounty.org. psgofmercercounty.org. And so there's just a tremendous amount of resources on our website. We're all very proud of it, those of us that have worked on it. It's over 120 pages of content for job seekers and people in transition. So go look around the website. It's more than just a landing page. It's more than just an event calendar. There's a tremendous amount of resources on the page. As a matter of fact, we do have a resources page, and the resources page has about 43 different links and resources right now. There are 15 other networking groups, kind of like ours, different types of groups. There are 26 other career resources. There's even a personal wellness resource and a mental health resource, because as we go through job search, especially in the virtual world, it could be a little bit more trying. And so we just wanted to put resources out there that we thought people would benefit from. So go take a look at our resources tab and see if there's any information that's there of interest to you. And among the resources that we do have is we have links to the career resources page for the state of New Jersey, state of New York, state of Pennsylvania, and state of Delaware. So even if you're in a very broad geographic area from us right now, we've connected with those as well. A lot of resources on that page. So as we get ready in just a moment, want to just remind you what our program. So I will ask you to keep your microphones on mute when you are not, when you're just listening to the presentation. But what we will do is we will have fairly interactive questions and answers. Lisa likes interactive programs, which I think is terrific. And so what we will do is we will use chat to use questions and answers. And you can use chat one of two ways. First of all, chat is the little button in the upper right corner, and it's called a cartoon call out. It looks like a circle with a little tab at the bottom, just like if a cartoon character or a comic book character was talking. It looks like that kind of circle. And so click on that and then send a chat that just says question. And if you send a chat that says question, I'm going to keep an eye on it. And when I can excuse myself or interrupt Lisa, I'll just say, excuse me, Lisa, we have a question. And we will ask you to unmute yourself and ask Lisa the question. Or if you're more comfortable, type the word question and then write your question. And then I will read it out loud. So if you're more comfortable doing that, that is fine. You don't need to turn your camera on if you don't want to, but when you need, you can turn your microphone on for that purpose. And the reason why we ask you to type the word question is, there's a lot of information that people put in chat. They introduce themselves and put in LinkedIn information and such. And if I see the word question, it helps your question stand out a little. It gives me the opportunity to not miss it. And I certainly don't want to miss your questions. So we'll be using chat as kind of raising your hand or asking questions. Okay, so we are just very pleased, PSG of Mercer County is pleased to welcome Lisa Manyoky. Lisa is the founder of Presence Intelligence, which she defines as the ability to recognize and align the best parts of who you are on the inside with what you project on the outside. Lisa is an energetic personality known for her intuitive understanding of people, interpersonal dynamics, words, and aesthetics. As a career-long specialist in communication, whether spoken, written, visual, or behavioral, Lisa helps her clients accelerate the achievement of their personal and career goals by developing, refining, or rebuilding their personal presence. She works routinely with professionals who are preparing for advancement to high-visibility leadership roles or seeking to become more likable, approachable, hireable, or promotable. Lisa is certified in several coaching disciplines that include life, executive, and neuroscience coaching. She is also a trained DISC administrator, a certified conversational intelligence coach and facilitator, and an inspirational speaker. Personally and professionally, she is a bright spot in the room, a bit of a firecracker who champions self-awareness, integrity, kind communication, and nothing short of excellence. So PSG of Mercer County is very pleased to welcome back our favorite firecracker, Lisa Manyoky.
Networking is one of my most loathed tasks. so if any of you out there don't like networking, you are in good company.
And it doesn't mean you're not good at it. It just means you don't like it, but doesn't mean you're not good at it.
That's right. And networking in person is virtually akin to going out to dinner. No matter which establishment you choose, your goal is to eat a meal. So depending on where you go, the utensils you need might be different. Sometimes you need chopsticks and sometimes you need a fork. And so it is with networking, whether it's virtual or in person, the purpose is the same, to become visible and then meet others who can shorten the distance between where you are now and where you want to go. However, the tools are different. Let's face it, in person was almost the norm, and now the virtual world is impossible to ignore, and it is here to stay. So a good place to start in any networking endeavor, whether it's an in-person event or a virtual one, because the rules are pretty much the same, is to understand the energy of what you put out there, whether it's in person or in print or on the phone or via Zoom. It's a great way to prepare for the process because networking is notoriously uncomfortable. And when you're uncomfortable, your energy changes and others pick up what you put out, whether you realize it or not. Because think about it, when you network, it requires that you interact with people who you don't know. It requires that you talk about yourself and your business to people you don't know, which many people dread. And it has great power to breed opportunities among a really diverse group of people, but the natural, irresistible draw to seek comfort from people who are familiar compromises the effectiveness of the process because your brain is a superbly efficient seeker of connection. It looks for the shortest distance between 2 points. In fact, Judith Glaser, with whom I studied conversational intelligence, tells us that the process of connectivity begins when you're within 10 feet of each other and within 0.07 seconds So that's close and fast. In order for networking to be effective, it has to be an experience that your brain perceives as friend versus foe, because otherwise your brain's going to look for the familiar, which makes it hard to meet new people and talk shop. So how can networking be more effective and more tolerable, whether virtually or in person? Well, believe it or not, networking science is the thing. And here are some helpful tips that are drawn from neuroscience and the science of networking. There are 4 bodies of research which suggest that paying attention to your motives for networking and being aware of what you put out there, whether you can see it or not, are important. The first study makes a case for being intentional and deliberate. Columbia Business School professors Paul Ingram and Michael Morris organized a networking mixer as part of an executive MBA program. They invited about 100 executives, consultants, entrepreneurs, and other professionals to share food and drinks on a Friday night. Many of the guests were students who had been lobbying to Columbia to include more social events as part of the curriculum so they could get to know who was who among them. So before the event, though, these professors surveyed all who were invited to attend, and they made sure they knew who knew whom and what their intentions were for the event. They found that on average, each guest knew about a third of the other people, and that most of them planned to use the event to meet new people. When the guests arrived, the researchers gave each one a tracking device so they could monitor who talked with whom. Then they instructed the guests to act normally, to talk with whomever you wanted, enjoy your food and drinks. And then, wouldn't you believe, as it turns out, most of the executives talked with people who they already know. Despite that 95% of them had expressed a desire to meet new people, they generally spent half their time with a third of the people they already knew. The few new meetings that did take place tended to be with others who were more like themselves. For example, consultants talked with consultants, and entrepreneurs talked with entrepreneurs. Bankers talked with bankers. Guess who was most successful at the event? The bartender. Birds of a feather flock together. In nature, birds use the safety of numbers tactic to protect themselves from predators, which is similar to networkers finding comfort with safe and familiar faces. And or those who are in similar professions. So the point of this study is to be intentional and aware of what you seek to accomplish as you network and choose to engage others who support your goals. The next body of work was compiled by Daniel Burkus, who is the Associate Professor of Leadership and Innovation at Oral Roberts University. He says that your close familiar ties are not your greatest networking assets. In other words, in his book, Friend of a Friend, he contends that friends are great for sharing trusted information and hanging out for dinners, but they are not ideal choices for creating opportunity. His research shows that weak ties or dormant ties, people we don't see or know very well, offer better chances to learn something new, to make a job change, or to promote professional growth. Burkus agrees that there is comfort in familiar packs, and neuroscience tells us that it makes it easier to keep negative energy at bay when we are comfortable. But by indulging familiarity and not exploring more distant networks, you limit growth and opportunity. So on this note, say hello to your buddies and then goodbye, and stretch beyond the circles you know, and resist the magnetic pull of the familiar so that you can explore better opportunities, which is typically involved with the unfamiliar. The third study that offers insight to improve your networking pursuits is that you consider reframing networking as an opportunity to serve. Look, I can tell you, I am a social creature. I will talk with anybody, anywhere, on the train, in the grocery store. In fact, if I ask my kids to come to the grocery store, they'll say, Mom, are you going to pick up a few things, or is it going to be one of your trips, which really implies a social experience. Now, I love people, and I really will talk with just about anybody and help anyone in need. In fact, at networking events or anywhere, I will seek out wallflowers, the people who are struggling to, find their place in the room, and I'll yuck it up with those who want to chat. But there was a time when I thought networking was just about as painful as it gets. You get that 30 seconds to stand up and say, hi, I'm Lisa Manyoky. I'm a specialer in personal and business presence, and I help professionals make sure that whatever they're putting out there, whether you can see it or not, is getting them where they want to go. I mean, it sounds affected and formulaic, even though it's true, and I loathed doing it. I was always happy when it was my turn to sit down. So, and let's face it, sitting down after your spiel typically feels pretty good. And I know I'm not alone. I have some really awesome colleagues who are extremely accomplished, but when I've interviewed them to construct a bio for them, they could not or would not participate. They didn't like talking about themselves, despite that they had really terrific credentials and wonderful stories to share. And often they didn't know what to say because they felt like they were bragging. They went to great lengths to avoid talking about themselves, even though they recognized the wisdom of providing insight to their expertise. Entertainment attorney Mark Maxwell interviewed his Belmont University students who state that they hate the idea of meeting people for personal gain, but only reluctantly believe that it's the only way to make a career happen. After networking, they claimed that they felt cheap and self-centered. In his TED Talk, Maxwell cites a 2014 Harvard study that supports the claims of his students. Participants in the study said they felt morally impure and physically dirty after professional networking. Now, psychologists call this the Macbeth effect or the Lady Macbeth effect, which harkens back to Shakespeare's Lady Macbeth when she tries to wash imaginary blood off her hands. The Lady Macbeth effect describes a psychological condition in which people who have done something wrong or ashamed that they feel this need to wash their hands or body in order to clear their conscience. So, given that we all need collaboration and support in order to get ahead, then how do we reconcile this problem of disliking the process? Well, according to Maxwell, the road to success is paved by serving. Networking is about visibility. Serving is about availability. Networking takes and repels. Serving gives and attracts. Networking is focused on self. Serving is focused on others. In other words, by focusing on others and their needs rather than on yourself and your business and your needs, the networking experience can become more enjoyable. Look, everybody likes to feel heard and to be seen. And when you offer your ear and are truly invested in another person's story or the details of their lives and their business, then you're authentically present and you lay groundwork for establishing excellent rapport. So network with the mindset that you're looking for opportunities to contribute to others instead of shining the light on who you are and what you do. Besides, this activates the norm of reciprocity, which is the fancy way of saying you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. The last study proposes that to make networking effective, you must partake in high-stakes events. According to Brian Uzi, a sociologist and network scientist, and Richard Thomas, who's the professor of leadership and organizational change at the Kellogg School of Business, schmoozing socially is far less likely to get you involved in a powerful network. Rather, he suggests jumping into projects, teams, and endeavors that draw a diverse group of people together. Problem with networking events is that when there's no bigger purpose other than having conversations with people and without a high stakes activity, then there's little incentive to move beyond the conversations that make you comfortable. So when the stakes are higher, however, you end up needing more than what existing contacts and similar people can provide. So you push further to meet more people who are different. These types of activities include serving on a nonprofit board or organizing a charity drive or playing in an amateur sports league or taking up a new hobby or anything else that draws a diverse group of people together and who need to work towards something greater than a dialogue. So look beyond LinkedIn and Zoom calls. Seek out opportunities that ask more of you than sharing a conversation. If you want education, it's available. If you want professional advice, it's available. If you want to have fun while serving, that's available too. Whenever you network, when you can be seen, in person or virtually, there are several tips that I recommend to make the process more effective. And the first, of course, is to turn off your phone. Now, I will admit, in one of my very early network invitations, I was at a meeting, forgot to turn off my phone, and when it came time for my 30-second spiel, a friend of mine called who lives on a farm, and just to keep myself amused, I have ringtones assigned to people so I know who's calling to decide whether or not I want to accept the call. And hers is a crowing rooster. And as I stood, the crowing rooster phone ringer went off. And it was pretty embarrassing. So I've made this mistake, and I can tell you that turning off the phone would solve that problem. It eliminates the distraction. Even vibrate, which I think some people have a sense of when their phone is vibrating, or even when it's on silent, there's some sensory communication that says, I'm getting a call and I need to look. So turn off your phone. Rinse, wash, and repeat. Slang for make habituation work for you. Habituation is defined as the diminishing of a physiological or emotional reaction to a frequently repeated stimulus. Now, new can be a three-letter word that induces discomfort. New shoes don't always feel good until you break them in, or a new house doesn't feel like home until you live in it for a while. But in time, familiarity replaces newness, and before you know it, new doesn't trigger as much anxiety as it did originally. And if networking makes you sweat, then keep coming back for more, because fear of the process will actually reduce as you expose yourself more repeatedly over time. All of us here are hardwired to seek out acceptance among social groups, friends, and colleagues. You're also hardwired to protect yourself. So in new, unfamiliar, and intimidating environments where you're schmoozing and selling your wares, which can feel really horrible, your brain will rise to the call of protection. Your body's going to follow its lead. It's going to put a pit in your stomach and get your palms sweaty and accelerate your heartbeat. It's going to keep you from opportunity and people who could actually grant you new opportunity. In 1991, Graham Davey, who is a psychologist at City University in London, found that 75% of undergraduates were afraid of spiders, even though they'd never experienced spider trauma firsthand. So you get the point. Davey states that everybody's born with fear, and neuroscience studies make a case that you can manage it. With repeated exposure in small increments, you can overcome whatever makes you uncomfortable, including networking. Do not work the room. Now that means the room in person, and it can also mean the platform. I've been on some calls and some video conferences where one person is blowing the curve in terms of chatter and absorbing the floor. If room workers show up in your midst, I do give you permission to excuse yourself and move away. They're those special few who really do blow that curve of sociability. They're the ones who are easing from one set of handshakes to another, or passing out cards at events and then collecting twice as many. Their seeming success in navigating that room or the virtual platform can make other people recede. And the truth is that little will come from rushed introductions and short chats, unless these people are vigilant and about sustainable follow-up. Mark Sackett, a passionate entrepreneur and public speaker, tells us that 70% of networkers do not follow up after events. So here's another approach. Look for other guests who appear to be uneasy or disconnected, or the ones who are clinging to the walls, praying that they find a friendly face or a handout. And trust me when I tell you that if you help them feel more comfortable in that space, chances are that you have granted an opportunity to establish rapport and to explore an opportunity that you might not have seen had you been too busy navigating the platform or the room. people first, business second. A commonly stated quote is fake it till you make it. I do not subscribe to this theory in networking events. Unless you're a method actor, please be who you are and show up where you are with transparency, whether that's currently working, not working, in transition. Transparency is a really great way to pave the road toward engagement. If you're aspiring toward a business goal or entrepreneurial suits, then say so. Sharing vulnerability increases approachability. And that's the goal of networking, to approach and get approached in a comfortable way, ideally. When you open door to opportunity for someone to serve, which remember is a better driver of meaningful connection, you're creating a roadway for reciprocity for you both. Dress to express. Of course, dress in ways that express who you are in person and virtually, and make sure that your wardrobe aligns with your pursuits. You may have heard that phrase, dress for the job you want. Same goes for whether you show up at an event or if you're on video or even on the phone. It can help you feel that you are in line with your pursuits. Your wardrobe can open doors, but do keep in mind that dressing for a role that really doesn't suit you will not sustain you for the long haul. The right wardrobe can turn heads and communicate confidence in your behavior, but if the expression or behavior that follows does not align, then your wardrobe's impact will be fleeting. There was a woman I know who, she worked in a jewelry store. This woman was always wearing the jewelry from the store. She was dressed impeccably, but she was not always kind to the customers. In fact, there was a gentleman who came in one day. He smelled like horses. He was dirty. He was in overalls. And she refused to wait on this guy because he wasn't dressed in a way that she felt was ideally presentable. You know what? The guy just happened to be a big landowner of a large farm, and he ended up buying a $57,000 watch. So because she refused to serve him based on strictly on his attire, she lost a pretty hefty commission. So it became clear that she only would cater to a certain type of client, and her wardrobe, though it showed her as really all buttoned up, it was not completely reflective of her willingness to deliver a high degree of customer service. So again, dress to express, but make certain that it's in alignment with who you are. How many times do you hear, you only get one chance to make a first impression? Frankly, so what? Your last impression is a better dictator of success, I think. You are not doomed to a reputation because you make a bad first impression or you're nervous at a networking event. I've seen good impressions actually evaporate pretty quickly, and I've seen poor ones become really irrelevant. A bad day and how it shows up is one day in the life. It can be erased. Your reputation really will not be committed to that very first impression. So don't worry about it. If you think you've made a bad impact or a weak impact at a networking event, then afterwards, follow up with those you'd like to know better. Open the communication pipeline and tell them that you were having a bad day. Be very transparent and honest about how you felt and what you experienced. If they understand, terrific. If they don't, then move on. When building rapport feels too much like work, then it's not working. In person.
Excuse me, Lisa, we have a question, if I may.
Sure.
So this is from Kathy.
Okay.
At an in-person networking setting, is there a best way to walk up to a new person or new group of people to begin a conversation? Is it okay to approach a new person or group who you have no connection at all and introduce yourself?
Sure. The whole purpose of networking is to meet new people, of course. But I've seen people literally move to the back of the room or hover at the edge of the buffet. And then for those people who might not be comfortable, if you're courageous enough to make it easier for them to participate, then you're their hero. They're going to appreciate that. So most assuredly, you can introduce yourself, and even better, ask them a question. How are you doing? Are you having a good time? Instead of telling them about you, ask them about them. Does that answer that question?
It seems to. Yeah.
Good.
Unless Kathy has a follow-up. There are no other questions in chat. Remember, folks, you can ask a question in chat. Either just write the word question and we will call on you, or if you type the word question followed by the question, I will just read it out loud. Thank you.
Yep. And on that note, I've done this as well, even on the virtual platform. If I've noticed that somebody either looks uneasy or distracted, or maybe they're just putting out an odd vibe that seems where they could use some encouragement, you can privately message them on some platforms. I don't think it's available on, is that available on GoToMeeting, David?
Yes, people can message individuals in chat.
Okay, so
But for the
sometimes
Q&A, I ask that you use everyone so both you and I can see it, but otherwise, yes.
Okay, so if somebody's looking a little uncomfortable, then you can reach out to them privately. There was a woman recently who I'm in taking a neuroscience certification. That's actually education, not enrichment. And let me tell you, the language and the brain technology is very difficult. But there was this one gal that she looked like she was drowning. So I reached out to her privately and asked her if she was okay. And she said she was trying to take this course so she could speak intelligently with her daughter, who's pursuing a degree in neuroscience. But all the clinical language it's extremely overwhelming if you've not had any experience with it prior. So it was helpful for her to have another voice that said, hang in there, don't worry, it gets easier through repetition. So go ahead and do the same thing in a virtual platform as you would in person if you sense that somebody could use a little bit of attraction. Handshakes, if we are in person, they are merciless messengers, meaning they're not going to censor what other people can pick up. They are strong influencers. So the connection between your brain and the palm of your hand is extremely huge, and it's fast. A firm handshake conveys trust and confidence. A damp handshake says, I'm nervous or insecure. A bone crusher says, I'm authoritarian or maybe overcompensating. A finger tipper, the little just touch my fingertips, doesn't do much of anything. So practice a handshake, because in-person events are coming back. Even though we still have some rules and regulations about how to participate, they are coming back. So we've had a year off from them, so make certain that you're up to speed. And make sure that when you handshake, you are looking a person in the eye. And please, when I say shake before you smooch, understand that don't overdo it. In other words, I've seen some people get way too pushy and way too close. So shake a hand, evaluate the distance that somebody needs, whether it's personal space or even space between emails and written correspondence. Then don't overdo it. I liken getting to know somebody in a business circle like dating. I mean, you want to make sure that you say hello and that you've got a lay of their land before you plan a big old wet sloppy kiss on them. And that goes for what's in print too, by the way. It's very common right now in LinkedIn and other venues to be, well, I call it victim of automated bots. In print, make sure that you get to know somebody gently before you start flooding their inbox with solicitations or messages that are not meaningful to them. And I can tell you, I've just had one recently where I got this message from a guy who said that my websites, which I've designed with a long career history in design and marketing, he told me that it was verbose. There are only pictures on it. And I thought, what are you talking about? There is no language here. It was so rude. So I Googled the language, and sure enough, it's just an automated message that he sends to everybody. I found it very annoying. I'd never do business with somebody like that. So again, make sure that you get a lay of someone's land, feel them out first before you are the tsunami of correspondence and contact.
Excuse me, Lisa, we have a question from Shari. And Shari, if you'd like, unmute yourself and ask your question.
Good morning. Lisa, you spoke about approaching people that may feel uneasy. and getting that conversation going. And I understand how that can be possible in virtual versus presence. How do you avoid or remove yourself from the virtual world when someone is dominating the conversation?
If you are a participant and not the administrator, then you can privately message the administrator of the event and ask them to reel that person in. I've done that before. It was one of my, it was a peer group of a course that I was taking where this one woman, I think she just liked the sound of her own voice, and she was boring. So I actually did message the administrator and said, you know, we're here to learn, not to listen to tales of her wedding plans. And the administrator actually helped to shut that conversation down by reminding everybody that this is a platform for all participants. So if you are the one who is running the show, then you can assume that role, which is, here, let's give someone else a chance. I mean, think about when you were in grade school or even in high school, and there was one person who always had their hand raised, and the teacher might say, hey, let's give someone else an opportunity to participate. It's as simple as that. Have you had that experience?
I've had that in business and social virtual events. And in the social world, it seems more difficult because of the situation where people are just socializing. In the business realm, it seems as if there's subject matters that are being discussed, but someone may be continuing to go on or go down the rabbit hole, or you know, they're not reeled in by the facilitator. But that's good advice, to send a message to the facilitator.
Yeah, I was polite about it. I said, look, I appreciate, she had someone else managing the dialogue, and she was not doing a really good job. I really wanted to learn topic. And when I tell you, this woman was talking about wedding plans and where she'd had dinner the night before, who cared, right? And the facilitator actually did message me later, and she said she addressed it with her directly and said to please keep on track. And it was resolved pretty quickly. So,
okay.
All righty.
Thank you.
All right. As far as networking and follow-up fast and keep in touch. 70% of people, it's been studied, do not follow up. So that leaves a lot of room for the 30% who do. So keep in touch and send a note in the mail. If you really want to send out, really send a note in snail mail, U.S. Post Office. That will attract attention because most people will rely on the digital realm to do so. You will stand out if you put a stamp on an envelope and handwrite a note. Use a CRM to remind you when to follow up. Now, CRMs, I will tell you, the one I use is called Less Annoying CRM. People who use Salesforce or Keep, they have a lot of bells and whistles to keep in touch with people. But if you're a small business or a singular entrepreneur, you don't need all the bells and whistles of that. But at a minimum, use your Google Calendar with alerts that remind you, keep in touch with so-and-so. Frankly, that was not one of my best assets. I didn't like doing it, but with practice, I became to rely really heavily on it and found that it did make it easier to follow up on people, because when there's a lot of activity, you forget who you spoke with. And the digital world of digital communication makes everything kind of gray. I remember there was a time when if I got a note from somebody, I knew whose handwriting it was and could recognize that person. But when correspondence started to come via email, everything's just black and white print. So do what you can to stand out, and routine correspondence. But remember, getting a lay of the land first and understanding what someone's threshold is for communication is a great way to follow up. And again, since there's only 30% of people who do, that gives you a lot of space to lead the pack in terms of correspondence. When it comes to correspondence, by the way, just a caveat here, to make very certain that what you put in print is something you'd be proud to share anywhere, because sometimes what you put in print ends up in places you don't want. I always use the example of Justine Sacco, who was on a plane to Africa, and here are 3 of her quotes that made it around the world in warp speed. She's sitting on a plane and she says, "Weird dude, you're in first class. It's 2014. Get some deodorant. Inner monologue as I inhale BO. Thank God for pharmaceuticals." Now she tweeted that. That was tweet number 1. Then came chili, cucumber sandwiches, bad teeth, back in London. And then lastly, which really doomed her and ruined her reputation and her job and her health, going to Africa. Hope I don't get AIDS. Just kidding, I'm white. So within the time that she was on that plane, a 7-hour flight, her tweets had been circulated thousands and thousands of times, such that when she landed, there was a throng of photographers waiting to see how she'd react when they realized that she was being crucified online for her commentary. She did end up losing her job. Believe it or not, she was a PR specialist, so she should have been better. My point is, be very careful about what you put in print and make certain that you're proud of it. Put people first, business second. Remember, everyone who networks is a person first and a professional second. A personal connection can have as much, if not greater value than a professional one. So take a little time to find out what people need, because when you see others, and I mean put that in quotes, they'll feel it. And then when you get home, please get in touch and send them a note to revisit the conversation of what you discussed so they understand that you also heard them. Finally, the rules of networking are really, in the virtual world, are not really that much different from the in-person one. So keep in mind, virtual events are here to stay. In fact, LinkedIn released a study recently. It's called the State of Virtual Events. It reported that 75% of event marketers worldwide plan to continue running virtual events over the long term. In-person and virtual events offer very different benefits, so a blend of them all is really ideal. Neither one is better than the other. In person, you can experience chance meeting while you're standing in line at the buffet or in the conference room lobby, and you can feel the buzz of energy when there's a crowd that's assembled. Virtually, you can reach people way past your local geography and then access participation from a diverse group of people who would not or could not travel to your site. A blend of in-person and virtual events will be part of the networking landscape indefinitely, and the bar will be raised for excellence. So on that note, and to finally conclude, best practices in terms, especially virtual: test your tech in advance, show up on time, dress appropriately, clean up your background, eliminate distractions, be visible, listen to who's speaking, ask succinct questions, share the floor, seek quality instead of quantity, follow up, respect refusals, and stay the course. So my point is, we have both available to us now, virtual and in person. The rules really are the same. Be respectful, be polite, contribute, and be kind. It's easy to do, and the more consistent you are, the more visible you are, then the more likely you are to see opportunities that you otherwise would miss. So please ask any questions that you have, and I am happy to stay on as long as necessary to answer them.
Well, thank you, Lisa. Good. Let's give folks just a little bit more time, excuse me, to put their questions in.
Sure.
But I have to say, I enjoyed this so much. This is probably among the best networking presentations I've been able to see. It was just very sensible, easy to follow. I was thinking about kind of the introverts kind of message you had a little bit earlier. And, a lot of people who are introverts, they kind of think, well, I'm an introvert. I can't network because, and I kind of think it's the opposite. I think networking is perfect for introverts. And here's why. Introverts hate big crowds. And yeah, if you go to a networking event, there's a big crowd, but it really works best when you're one-on-one with somebody. You find that one person that you want to talk with, and you just talk with that one person and kind of avoid the rest of the crowd. And then even if you tend to be a little bit quiet as an introvert, well, that makes you a good listener. And when you're a good listener, you're actually a more effective networker because it's about the other person. So, you know, I think the comments about that just, yeah, really makes good sense. So, yeah.
Well, even extroverts don't like to stand up often. I mean, I am a top shelf extrovert, but when all eyes are on me and I'm selling my wares,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, even the most seasoned actor or actress will talk about stage fright until they get on stage, and yeah, that's that, and their whatever their personality is. And I saw a moment ago, Michael, you had your hand up,
Yeah,
or
I have something that kind of relates to what Lisa said a while ago when you were talking about the woman and how she dresses and how she the sales thing. Uh, Way back when I got out of graduate school, I wound up working in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, in a chemical plant. I'm a chemical engineer, and I was bike riding with my club, and this one fellow, his uncle or something, happened to be a farmer, and he dressed like a farmer, overalls and the whole bit. Drove up to Baton Rouge, went to the local Cadillac dealer. Nobody, no salesperson would even look at him. Went down towards New Orleans, and I'm surprised somewhere between New Orleans and Baton Rouge there's a Cadillac dealer. Walked in there, said, I want that car, plopped the cash down on the salesman's table, bought the car, drove back to Baton Rouge, went to see the sales manager, put the receipt on his desk saying he just bought a car in cash and that he'd just been there. No one bothered with him. The sales manager had an absolute fit, because he was a guy who could buy in cash, and they let him walk because he didn't look like to them he had that kind of money. So I mean, it just goes to show you. I think that's
sure.
Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
your attire can certainly turn heads. It certainly can. It can open doors. But in some instances, like in that case, his behavior can override attire. So I know that some people, there's always an untucked shirt or there's always a spot on their shirt, but they're really high performers. It's not as relevant. And I know others who are impeccably dressed but are not nice people. So wardrobe is a courier of information. It can really lay some great groundwork for attention, but it is not going to sustain you. It can be just a simple case of smoke and mirrors. And it could just be, somebody was working. I remember there was a very fancy dress store that my mother used to attend to visit. She bought a lot of things there. And I had a soccer practice, so I was in sweatpants with grass stains on my knees. I was just picking up her clothing, and nobody talked to me across the counter. Nobody. But when I mentioned my mom's name, suddenly, she was a high-paying customer. Oh, they were all over me. So, I was really terrible. But I have a little rebellious streak. I made sure that whenever I went in that store, I had the worst clothes on that I owned because I thought it was so annoying that the only reason they were willing to talk with me was when they made the association that I belonged to a high-paying customer. But prior to that, I mean, they looked through me, over me, above me, around me. So.
Is that don't judge the book by its cover?
Pretty much. Or judge the book by its cover. You will judge the book by its cover, but don't assume that cover is permanent. It just might be a bad day. It might be a set of circumstances that warranted one piece of attire for another. For networking events, we know when they are. We can prepare for them so we can dress appropriately. So it's in your best interest when you have the opportunity to dress in a way that, number one, reflects your personality, two, that highlights your best assets, and three, that's appropriate for the event.
Is it the book Blink, I think it was, where one of his comments was, we make thoughts about people in the first 15 seconds that, we form opinions, I think is the word, in the first 15 seconds when we meet someone. 15 seconds doesn't seem like much, but I assume he's correct.
Yeah, that's Malcolm Gladwell. He
Yes.
starts off the book with, he calls it thin slicing, meaning that we take in a lot of information very quickly and develop an opinion. And he starts off the book with the story of, it's pretty remarkable. It was some type of a Greek statue that made its way through core, like they were extracting core samples to make certain that this particular statue was authentic. It was typically found in digs. And there was this, I mean, they paid millions of dollars for it. And there's this one professional who said that's a fake and could tell by the fingernails, because a statue like this would typically not have such defined fingernails. And it turned out to be phony. But in that guy knew what he was looking at and could tell instantly based on appearance that was not authentic.
Lisa, getting back to my comment though, it really makes me think that when someone makes a judgment about you based on how you're dressed, it goes back to what you were talking about. They don't know who you're related to. They don't know who your best friends are. They don't know who that you might be able to give a referral to somebody if you're treated well. So you're kind of burning a bridge, because you never know where it might, what a person might connect you to. They might come back and bring you 10 customers, that kind of thing. So you always should present your best self when you're dealing with someone that you don't know, at least certainly for the first time.
Absolutely. But give the benefit of the doubt if somebody, for whatever reason, doesn't look in a way you think they should.
We have a couple of questions in chat, so I'll read one from Bill. Do you have any advice on networking on LinkedIn? I feel awkward attempting to connect or approach a stranger online. I'm okay, not great, in person, but online is a little tougher for me.
Actually, I call online communication the cloak of anonymity. Some people put in print things that they otherwise would never say face to face. I think this is a problem with LinkedIn. It used to be the place where you could find people, see what they did, and decide what to do. But when LinkedIn started to expand its services and allow automated bots to start sending unsolicited solicitations, I get them daily and they drive me crazy. So understand that there's a lot of noise right now in the correspondence of LinkedIn. If you're going to reach out to somebody, be certain that you've read their profile, that you're finding something that is relevant in terms of communication. I mean, just don't pelt them with any old question. I've had people who, it's very clear to me they didn't read my profile. And if I've responded to say, hey, listen, it's clear to me that you didn't read the information, I get some other message, in a week's time. It's very clear that it's on an automated timeline. So just see if you can find a common ground. Maybe common people. Offer to make them a recommendation or what are they? An endorsement. So in other words, contribute to them. Remember, we mentioned about reframing networking as an opportunity to serve. That might help.
Yeah, I think it, just kind of emotionally view it as that one-on-one connection, and almost like shouting across the room to somebody rather than right in front of them, and maybe you can, get that working. There's a way to get it working. Yeah,
pass a compliment. I mean, think about it. When somebody says, hey, it's really wonderful what you're doing. Looks like you're making great strides. I've had people write to me and say, wow, I could tell from your profile, your LinkedIn profile, that you have high energy. They are people I didn't know, but it was really lovely that they took the time to say so and to pass along a quick note. It was clear that it wasn't automated, and I remember who they are. So
we also have a question from Michael. What is the best icebreaker conversation at a networking event? One prominent career coach at her networking events has the participants put their hobbies and interests on their name tags.
Yes, in fact, I talked to David. If I've done this before.
We talked about Pat, who was on this call. He's a ballroom dancer.
Okay, well,
Yeah, and he's on.
So in some instances, if I'm running the show, I would tell people to take their name off the screen and replace it with "Ask me about." So I'm not running the show, but instead of showing up at a networking event on the name tag, instead of having your name, it might say, "Ask me about my grandchildren," or "Ask me about my dogs," or "Ask me about my martial arts training." So it gives you an opportunity to, instead of shining the light on the conversation, which is often called FLOP, family, location, occupation, and purpose. That's typical dialogue one, the dialogue acronym. However, if you want to ask somebody, if you see somebody across the room who's raising greyhounds or who's a grandparent, it's much easier to approach them about common ground than it is, so what's your name? Where are you from? What do you do for a living? What are your goals? Great.
Just to amplify a bit on what David said about the ballroom dancing, this was when we were live at the Princeton Library.
Right.
I must have had 50 people come up to me. Not a single one asked me what I did. They all wanted to know about the ballroom dancing. So there, for me, was the perfect icebreaker.
Exactly.
For anybody who wants to change their name now, you go to your picture or your name on the GoToMeeting, and as you hover over it, you'll see a little circle with 3 dots. So you click on the circle with the 3 dots, there's a little pop-up menu, and there's an option to edit your name. So if you want to do that now, and we're going to wrap up in a few minutes, but keep the meeting, the session open, even though we'll end the recording, then we can have our after party and we can ask each other about whatever you want us to ask about.
And think about it, when you have a conversation about something in common, it's so much easier. It doesn't feel, remember I talked about the formulaic, my name is Lisa and I do blah, 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 and I help people who, it's a very different tempo that's much more relaxed and enjoyable. And then it takes the edge off the fear factor and the discomfort of approaching someone you don't know.
So there is another question, and the name posted is Alex. I don't know if that's anything more interesting than his name, but Alex is a good friend. So Alex, if you don't mind, unmute and certainly ask me.
Yes, I just did. Lisa, terrific presentation. Thank you. Lisa, while at college many years ago, I took one course about communication, and I remember 2 things from that course. And one of them is, it's not important what you want to say. It's important what the audience want to hear. So, however, I am often on Zoom, and many times on my screen appears a sentence or a paragraph which essentially is self-praise. Where is this coming from? Where is the cultural thing coming from? It's okay to put something and announce how great you were 20 years ago working for your boss.
I'm not sure what exactly do you want to know? I'm not sure I understand.
Okay, well, communication is not about what you want to say. Communication is about what the audience want to hear, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm saying, every so often when I attend a Zoom meeting, there is a message popping up on my window where somebody announces his name and what he did in the past and how great he or she thinks they were in the past. I'm not sure if the audience really wants to read this.
No, I've experienced that too. Some people use the chat or as a way to make themselves known. And when it comes to the topic, my favorite phrase is feed a hungry crowd, but find out what they want to eat first. They're going to eat more of it, right? So when somebody's using the chat to announce themselves, it's a little pretentious. Unless the administrator of the program says, please introduce yourself, it's really personality forward and can be intrusive. I don't recommend doing that. But I agree with you.
Thank you for the support.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Alex, you and I have had a similar discussion about elevator pitch, and we hear people say in their 15 or 30 seconds, hello, my name is, and I've got 20 years of experience that you no longer use, but I'm going to use it to help you grow your business. They're not talking about how they're going to help you or what the audience wants to hear, the audience in that case being hopefully someone who may want to hire them. Instead, they want to talk about their great accomplishments, but may not be relevant going forward. And so I think that's a similar observation you had just now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Any other questions for anyone? If you want, just alert us real quickly in chat. And if not, of course, we will wrap up the meeting, but we'll keep the virtual session open, but the recording off. It is our after party. It's kind of like hanging around the library once the meeting ends. And Lisa, you are more than welcome to hang around with us for a little while if your time allows.
All right.
David, along the lines of the elevator pitch thing that you were just talking about, I kind of wonder, you know, how many people just walk up to someone who's a stranger and deliver that? I mean, how do you know that the person is even receptive to your message? I mean, I've created them, but other than network meetings, I never really know when to use them. Maybe at an interview, but you certainly don't say it to people while you're on your way from the first floor to the fifth floor or something like that. It just, you know, you get the point. I'm driving.
Well, not only do I get the point, I agree with you. I don't believe, Michael, you've been to any of our in-person PSG meetings, but we didn't do elevator pitches. We did what I would call 5-second introductions. Hello, my name is David Schuckman. I own my own technology support business. And that would be my 5-second. And the reason why is you're right. Most of the people in the room, or even when you just walk up to someone, it may not be the audience. So why bore them with that? But as to your question, what do you do with that elevator pitch? Now that you've started that introduction and conversation, someone may say, oh, nice to meet you, Michael. Tell me about yourself. And then you can use your 30-second introduction at that point. But you're right. You don't walk up to a stranger and just say, hello, I'm Michael, and I do this, and here's my history. And yeah, so I agree. I think it's the second or third comment you make, certainly not the first one. That's my 2 cents.
Mm-hmm.
Lisa, I have a question in terms of the ice breaking.
Mm-hmm.
What would, and in line with this whole conversation about how do you do it and who's bored and so on, I found that walking up to people and just telling them my name to start with has actually been an icebreaker in and of itself, because they would come back and then say, well, my name is Lisa or Joe, and then the conversation starts. What's your thought on that?
That's fine. It's friendly. You know, when you think about a networking event as an exchange of conversation that's friendly, you know, hi, I'm Lisa. How are you? I mean, that's an opener, you know, but it's hi, I am, followed by a question. So when you're looking to gain information from someone, you're giving them an opportunity to share. They don't have to take that initiative, which makes it easy for them to answer the question. And it shows that you're interested, so long as you really are. Because I can tell you, if you're just doing that due diligence of pretending like you're interested, people know there's a tinny feel to being inauthentic. So the tactical questions, just courtesies, people will feel it. So as long as you're genuinely interested, there's a quality to it. It is silky smooth and wonderful. And I recommend that saying hi and asking the question is perfectly fine. I'd rather do that than, hi, I'm so-and-so and I do blah, blah, blah to help blah, blah, blah. You know, those formulas make me crazy.
Right.
I have a comment to make. I know a lot of the time you're in a meeting, you find somebody you want, and then you go to look for their name on LinkedIn and there's them and 5 other people. I have heard, and I find it very annoying. I think anytime you're in a meeting, other than Zoom meeting, go to a meeting, whatever, unless you're on it with family or something, it's amazing how many people don't put their virtual business cards in their chat. And I mean, you could be on a meeting in an hour and there's like no chat going on. I find it extremely annoying. I mean, I have been taught, and I do almost every meeting I go to, one of the first things you do is you introduce yourself, you put your information out there. So if somebody wants to find you, they know how to find you. I mean, I have a unique name, but even me, I mean, there's several of me online. If you go to find Scott Boudreau without the CPIM, there's several of them on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Great. Thank you all for sharing. So there are no more questions or alerts for questions in chat. So thank you very much. There have been some great kudos and appreciation as well from some people. So a lot of people got a lot out of this in addition to me. So Lisa, thank you so much, as always, for being such a wonderful friend and supporter for PSG of Mercer County. And this was a wonderful program. And as you and I spoke, you told me you will be able to share these slides or email them to me later. So I'll post them shortly once I get them from you.
Okay.
And in a little while, I will also post the video as well. And so that takes a little while, but that probably by the end of the day. And just before we wrap up, I want to let folks know of a couple of things coming up. So certainly we're going to keep this session open, the virtual session open, for us to kind of hang around the virtual room for a little while, but I will turn the recording off in a minute. Next week, we will be having, I don't know if it's the real Alex Freund or the robot Alex Freund, but he will be talking about the bot is ready to interview you now. More and more, there's automated interviews. This is separate from the applicant tracking system. Alex has done a tremendous amount of research, being a career coach specializing in interview prep. So next week, we'll be talking about the bot is ready to interview you now. And the following week, June 4th, Marty Latman will be here. He will be talking about getting interviews through successful networking. So whether it's in person or virtual, the way we were talking about today, he's going to leverage that on getting interviews through successful networking, our good friend Marty Latman. And also do keep in mind there are lots of other groups similar to ours where we are supportive of people in career transition and job search. Of course, you can always visit the Landing Expert website to get the list of local networking groups. It's landingexpert.com, landingexpert.com, and go to the networking tab. Tuesday evenings, New Jersey job seekers will be meeting virtually Tuesday at 7:30. I did post their Zoom link or their web address for the link in the LinkedIn group for PSG of Mercer County, so go check that out. And also some of our friends, PSG of Central New Jersey meets every Monday at 10:30 in the morning, psgcnj.biz, psgcnj.biz, and PSG of Morris County, psgmc.org. psgmc.org meets every Wednesday morning at 9:30. So lots of places you can keep active virtually and practice your virtual networking. So that's it for today. Just want to thank Lisa one more time before we officially wrap up. And otherwise, just wish you all a wonderful weekend. It looks like it'll be hot and sunny, so hopefully you can enjoy outside. And hopefully, otherwise, we will see you virtually very soon as maybe next week. So bye, everybody.